Gentleman from Texas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome again, Mr. Secretary. I note that it was about 18 months ago that the President was elected. I think it was 13 months ago that the administration decided to double taxpayer liability for the GSEs. 9 months ago that the administration...
Not to double the liability.
Under the original preferred stock agreements, $100 billion per to $200 billion per?
Under the law the Congress passed, you gave my predecessor unlimited authority to make sure Fannie and Freddie could meet their obligations. At that point, in effect, the government committed to make sure they had whatever capital was necessary to meet those obligations. All I have done is carried out that basic commitment using the authority that Congress gave my predecessor.
Okay, well, exercising that
Didn't
authority...
change our liability.
Mr. Secretary, please control the time here. It was 9 months ago that in the administration's white paper we were told to expect some type of plan or option in the budget. We know what that plan was, and that is you continue to monitor the situation. 3 months ago, the administration announced unlimited taxpayer exposure for Fannie and Freddie. I just note, Mr. Secretary, in 18 months, the administration has clearly found the time to put forth a plan that would provide substantial regulation for 1/6 of our economy on health care, extend more control over broker-dealers, investment banks, credit card companies, community banks, hedge funds, finance companies, payday lenders, pawn shops, auto companies, but still no plan for the GSEs except seemingly unlimited taxpayer exposure. So one member's opinion, Mr. Secretary, with respect to the timing, I just think the timing is unacceptable. Now, let's talk about the taxpayer exposure. Clearly, you're familiar with the numbers. CBO estimates over the next 10 years, $376 billion. We know that there's trillions more of exposure there. And so on the one hand, I see that Treasury continues to monitor the situation. I guess my greater concern is there in fact a de facto plan, perhaps not by design, but perhaps by accident? I note that the chairman of our committee in January stated that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are now, quote, basically public policy instruments of the government. Charles Haldeman, Freddie Mac's chief executive, has stated, quote, we're making decisions on loan modifications and other issues without being guided solely by profitability. Daniel Mudd, who is Fannie Mae's former CEO, said the government is, quote, running Fannie and Freddie as an instrument of national economic policy, not as a business. It appears to many of us, and I'll give you an opportunity to disabuse me of the notion or to accept the premise, that what we now have is the GSEs are essentially an instrumentality of the administration to fund taxpayer funds into, frankly, a failed foreclosure mitigation plan with nothing else in sight. So I'll yield to you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Congressman. Let me tell you what our strategy and our plan is. Our strategy is to fix this damaged housing finance market, to make sure this economy recovers from the trauma caused by the recession. We're going to do that as carefully and quickly as we can. As part of that process, we will be working with this committee to lay out a comprehensive set of reforms to the housing finance system, including the GSEs. But our obligation now and our priority now is to try to make sure, again, we heal what is broken in this housing finance system, and we help this economy dig out of this terrible mess.
I understand that, Mr.
A lot of
Secretary.
progress in that area.
There's still no timetable for that. Is that correct? As of
what?
today, there's
For
still
full
no
recovery on
timetable
this?
for a plan dealing with the GSEs?
Yeah. Again, we're looking forward to having this debate about reform. You're not going to care more about this than I am. I'm the one who has to preside over a set of broad commitments that I inherited from my predecessor, and we were going to do a careful,
Secretary, it's just a simple
competent
question.
job. Hold on,
Is there a
hold on, just one
timetable,
second.
or is
Okay,
there
we're
not
going
a
to do a careful,
timetable?
competent job
Gentleman from Texas, this time.
of digging out of that mess and making sure that we work with you to put in place a set of reforms that will leave our country in a better position in the future.
Well, in the little bit of time I have left, Mr. Secretary, is there any, in your mind, in the administration's mind, is there any reason that inherently we must have a government-sponsored entity to securitize mortgages in order to have a stable home ownership in America, because I know many other nations do not have GSEs.
This is the central existential question as you contemplate reform. And as I said earlier in response to one of your colleagues, I think there is a quite strong economic case, quite strong public policy case for preserving, designing some form of guarantee by the government to help facilitate a stable housing finance market. But it can't be the one we have today. It can't be the one we live with over the last decade. It's going to be significantly different. But I think we will likely to conclude, as our predecessors have, that there'll be some role for a guarantee of some form.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.